When we think about libraries a lot, we do think about books, and we think about them as a place to go and study or a place to check out a book. And there's a lot more to libraries than that. So when we're talking about collection development, we're talking about books, we're talking about hiking backpacks, briefcases, anything that goes into a library that a patron can check out or they can use within the library itself to help them be a better citizen in society, essentially. And as a librarian, when you're doing collection development, you're not just thinking about, would I like this? That's not your purpose at all. It's, would the patron use this, and is it economically feasible? And does it actually serve my patron well? If I say that we want to do a Fitbit in a library, as a librarian, I have to make a case for that. I have to say, this research shows this. Or, if I want to put a certain book in a library, I have to have a pretty, good reason for it. I can't just put any old book in there. So when we talk about collection development, we're talking about all the reasons why a material or a laptop, a tripod, all the reasons why it's there in the first place. A librarian has gone through the thought process, and it can be as simple as, hey, this is a textbook for one of our classes, we need to add it to the collection. Okay. It doesn't have to be as complicated as I'm making it sound, but it does need some thought behind it. If it's something like a Fitbit, where there's more questions behind it of, why would we ever put that in our library? Like, what is the case for that? You kind of need some information to back up your argument of, a Fitbit could inspire students to get moving more, and it could help students become more physically active because they have something to track their movement with. Well, if a student is physically active, generally speaking, looking at the research, they're going to be productive mentally. But it's just one more way that students could be served on a college campus. So when I surveyed UNCG undergrad students and I asked, what would you use a Fitbit for if you could check it out of the library? There were responses like, I would use it for a kinesiology course. I would use it for a dance class. I would use it for, an intramurals game, whatever. But the overall consensus is, I didn't even know we could use those because there's no communication. And when we don't communicate to our stakeholders on campus, such as our deans, our, provosts, whoever's in charge of keeping us afloat, if we don't, communicate correctly that, hey, we're an institution that deserves a lot of investment because we are directly related to your students' success. We're directly related to your students' graduation. We're directly related to your graduation and retention rates itself. It makes it a little harder to say, hey, can I have the money to buy this Fitbit because I want to put it in my collection, because I want to make our students aware of the ways we're trying to make them more physically active. We care more about their minds, And so it's harder to communicate that when you have a lot of red tape like that to go around. And especially on college campuses, with adding something like a Fitbit, that makes some questions because people think, well, there's a student health center. There's a student rec center. Aren't the students getting their physical fitness through that? As a librarian, I don't need to do someone else's job for them. Well, as a librarian, we're here to serve our students in a maximum capacity. That means past their minds, past their grade level, their GPA, whatever. Are they feeling well mentally? Are they feeling well physically? It's serving your patron and serving your student as best as possible, and that means taking every part of their life into account. One of the studies that I looked at for my research, a librarian actually took a rec center course with her students, and this was a librarian out of Alaska, but she actually had, enrolled in a course with the students, and they saw her as their peers. They didn't just see her as a librarian behind a circulation desk somewhere that, they can only ask questions if they're in the library. And so she was on the floor sweating with them in their kinesiology course, and they really noticed that, and they took that away from that class, and she saw an immediate return in that the students would come to her if they saw her in the library. They would ask her questions that we fight for so hard to get students to ask us in the first place. And she really developed those relationships just by being somewhere else on campus and by being in a class with these students. And they saw her for more than just a librarian. She was somebody that they could come to ask them their questions. And so it was a unique situation of partnering with something else on campus to bring students back into the library in order to make them more successful as students to begin with.